Just another story that comes to mind. It's a bit out of order with some of the others, but it might be of interest to somebody that's listening to these recordings I'm making. When we were told, like, that we were going to Vietnam, we were given our injections and inoculations, etc., against any diseases that we might pick up over in Vietnam. And we were then sent on pre-embarkation leave. That was for a week, and the idea was to go around and see your family or whoever, friends, and say goodbye, because we were going away for anywhere up to a year. We were the first lot to go over there, one battalion, and when I say the first lot, they sent advisors over in 1962, unarmed. They found out it was too dangerous, so they armed them, and there was Australian and American advisors over there from 1962. But our government decided that in 1965 they were going to send combat troops, and one battalion was it. We were based at Holsworthy. Now, as I said, we went on pre-embarkation leave, and we had to be back in camp. I think it was the 21st of May, 1965, and I know when I went into camp, because I'd been around to all the family, when I went into camp, as soon as I walked in, they just said it's a closed camp. In other words, nobody could leave, and we were all kept there as we came in. As the guys came in, were given the same instructions as I was. We got our gear together, prepared everything to go over. Now, on the night of the 26th, they loaded us on trucks, convoy, at Holsworthy, and we headed off, heading in to Garden Island. Now, it was around midnight, and I don't know how the protesters, student protesters, whatever, found out what was happening, but when we were driving along the road between Holsworthy and Liverpool, they were laying on the road. The dispatch riders were riding back and forward along our convoy on the motorbikes, our guys, and telling these students to get out of the road because, they'd get run over. The trucks would not stop. And there was military police doing the same thing. They were also blocking off every intersection so that we had a complete clear run from the camp at Holsworthy right through to Garden Island. Now, mean, the students got out of the road because they knew the trucks wouldn't stop, so they got out of the road. And I can assure you that the trucks would have kept driving over them. There was no messing about. Anyway, we went onto the ship and we were given areas, each platoon from each company all around the ship. And it was the HMAS Sydney, it was aircraft carrier at the time, and it was due for retirement, but they kept it and made a troop carrier out of it. The first thing we had to find out, like the Navy language, what they called each area, and they had different names than the Army had for different places. I mean, the toilet showers, they were called a head. I think the walls were called bulkheads or something. The area where we spent most of our time and slept was called a mess, and the kitchen was called a galley, and where you eat. But as in the Army, where we eat was called the mess, and we used to sleep in the barracks. But anyway, going on with the story, there's a little bit of confusion from time to time as to if you got sent somewhere. Well, you might have to ask somebody, one of the Navy guys, where such and such a place was. And, but, apart from that, it took us 2 weeks to go over there. I won't go into every detail, but we did exercise stuff, and we used to do live firing off the back of the ship at balloons with water in them. They put water in the balloons and blow them up, and they used to stay on the water. And the guys with pistols or short-range weapons fired at the balloons first, and then the guys with the rifles came out and started knocking them off from once they got over a couple 100 yards out. And my job with the M60 when our platoon was there was to clean up what was left. I didn't have to aim much. I mean, with the M60, it fired 550 rounds a minute, and I virtually just walk across the water with the bullets. I could just walk up and blow. I could see the water splashing up from each bullet and just walk into a balloon and knock it out. Anyway, I got most of them, I think. Now to go on with the story, it was getting towards the end of the trip, and people from each company and each platoon had to take it in turns of working in their kitchen, the galley, and serving the meals and whatever, and doing the washing up and all the jobs I hated. They came, our sergeant came to us, Punchy Stokes, and he picked a few of us out, I think about 10 or 12 of us, and he said, and I was one of them. You blokes in the working in the mess. So he said, follow this bloke. And the sailor took off and I got on the back of the line, back end of the line. And as we worked our way towards the galley, as they called it, our guys went one way and I went the other. At one particular point on the trip. And I went down a couple of ladders and I decided I'd spend a few hours just exploring the ship. And I had a look at where the lift was that used to lift the planes up from down inside the ship up onto the flight deck. And, all different areas of the ship. It was unreal. Going along these little corridors and stuff. But I was working my way down all the time because I wanted to have a look what was down the bottom. I eventually came out on a steel grating. And I have talked to sailors about it since, and they told me that I was right at the bottom of the ship. But below me, I could see this big crankshaft. It looked like a crankshaft out of a car, but it was an enormous big thing. And it was turning, and it was obviously driving the propellers or something. I couldn't see how it was driven, but I could see this big crankshaft turning. I wasn't there long, and this guy in very dirty blue overalls, but he had a white officer's cap on, came out of a doorway and let a scream out of him and asked me what I was doing there. And I'd taken particular care not to touch anything while I was looking around. And I just said to him, I'm lost. And he said, what do you mean you're lost? And I said, well, our sergeant told me to go to the mess. And I've got lost here somewhere and I can't find the mess. And he said, listen, he said, you shouldn't be down here, you're not allowed down this area. But he said, he was quite good. I think he felt a bit sorry for me. Probably thought I was retarded or something, I think. Anyway, he drew me a map as to how to get back up to where the army blokes were sleeping and where we used to spend our days in the sleeping areas. And most of the guys slept in hammocks that they put up and then swung up and slept in the night. I couldn't sleep up there, so I used to sleep just on the benches below, and I never had any problem with seasickness or anything like that. But had I stayed up in a hammock, I would have got sick straight away because the ceiling above was moving back and forward, even though you couldn't feel it. We had, the ship was blacked out, I think 5, 6 times because we were warned that Indonesia were going to sink the ship and all this sort of stuff, stories that get round, but the Navy were taking it seriously, and but it was a good experience. I saw ships refuelling at sea and the way they done it. It was interesting. They'd fire a bolt out of a 303 across with a cord on it, like a fishing line, and gradually keep pulling bigger and bigger ropes across until they got big cables across, and then they pulled the fuel line across and they'd hook the ship up to the supply ship, and then the fuel was pumped through and 2 ships stayed same distance apart. And some of the Navy guys were going back and forth between the ships in what we used to call like a flying fox. They just sat in a chair type thing and went across on cables. But yeah, I didn't do any of that, but I watched it all. And they also used to have the boats tied on the side that would drop off, and the Navy guys had them fully manned, and as they got close to the water, they'd drop, and then when they hit the water, the motor was already going, and they'd just take off and they'd circle around a few times and come back and hook up. It was more to do, I think, with if people were overboard or something like that. But it was, the whole thing was interesting. Now I'll go back to the story that I sort of set out to tell. It's taken in turns, all the rifle companies and the support company, and I was in support company with mortars. I was a machine gunner. You had to do kitchen duties, for one day, and that meant like serving the food and doing the washing up and all that sort of thing. And of course, I'd avoided that. But somewhere I've got lost in the story. But the guy gave me this map to get back up. This guy that got into me, he gave me this map to get back up to the mess. Now he sent me to where we sleep. And when I got there, it was not dark, and the sergeant said, weren't you in the in the mess today? And I said, I was supposed to. I said, well, I got lost. And I said, and this officer, Navy officer, told me to come to here. He gave me a map, and I showed him the map. I said, I asked him to, I told him I was supposed to be in the mess. This is what, and Punchy gave me a bit of a dirty look, but he knew darn well what I'd done. And I got out of doing mess duties for the day by confusing the word galley and mess. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.